and welcome to our panel, Creating Healthy Online Communities So Gaming Really Can Be for Everyone. My name is Galiz-Rowe. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the EIC over at Uppercut, and I'm joined by some really cool guests today. So joining us from But Why Tho, the EIC one, Kate Sanchez. How's it going, Kate?
Hi, it's going really good. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you. Also joining us, we have IGN's SEO editor, Felicia Miranda.
Hello.
How's
Happy to be here. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super stoked you were able to come. And last but super not least, a producer, a game critic, a streamer, Paul Tamayo.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So, we're talking about online communities today, and I thought a good way to kind of start this would be to maybe bring up kind of our experiences with online communities and how that kind of has shaped our viewpoints on them, and then kind of, like what we consider to be like good online communities. So I don't know if anybody had some thoughts right off the bat there, but yeah, I thought I'd open the floor and let us just kind of see.
Yeah, I think my first experience with an online community was through, I don't want to call them out, but like there was a hashtag that formed in the comic book and in comic book Twitter, and everybody started building a community around that. That community then led to a site and stuff like that. It was a great experience until it wasn't. And a lot of it was that it was pretty much all founded by dudes. And then all of the people at the top were dudes. And then it was what taught me that communities do have to have structure, even when they're forming organically. Because a lot of the issues that we had run into through that was there was a lack of structure, and then when the structure happened, it wasn't thoughtfully put together to make sure that it represented all the people coming to it. So that was when we started building out our community up. But why though? We were trying to be really focused on making sure that we had people in positions of power that were representative of the people who were coming to us to, find a home. That, and I guess my other community was when I came up in games, I just did FPS. So I spent a lot of time in Call of Duty lobbies to learn what not to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think my first experience with an online community was just playing games online, and that did teach me a lot very early on that, like, as a girl and as, a gamer, I hate saying those things.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's hard. You get targeted once you go on your mic and or you get called a pubescent little boy. And they start to, go after you and call you names and things like that. And that's when I was like, I'm just not going to talk at all. That was my takeaway at a very early age. And as I got older and I started seeing people talk about this stuff more and seeing how common it was for other women, it was nice to see, like, okay, there's other people out there and they're supportive. And you know what, we can form our own communities and make it a safer space in those games and things like that. So
yeah, I had a very similar experience coming up playing, way back when consoles first started going online and hearing a bunch of awful stuff off the bat with me and my friends, because we sound different, like we speak differently, we have slang, we have these different sort of inside jokes and stuff that are very much within our own sort of Black and brown communities. And, we got hit with a lot of really nasty stuff, and that I think that also informed how I wanted to sort of create a community that didn't, think like that or didn't sort of reward that kind of behavior, especially. And then after that, a few years ago, I started working at I no longer work there, but I worked at Kotaku for a bit. And if there's one way to get to know a lot of folks all at once is to be on camera, on your voice on streams and stuff, and good and the bad with that. And that also really informed how I wanted to sort of create a community surrounding my podcast at the time. And it's a lot of learning lessons, a lot of things you don't want to do and things you don't like to see and hear, especially. And that really informs, the kind of folks you want to invite to your space,
Yeah. Um, Most of my online communities were actually like online like role play forums because I was a big old dork as a child and continuously, but you know, now I get paid to do it at least. Um, and so I feel like I learned a lot about like those communities are very, very set and like you have to have mods, you have to have rules. Like those places, like when you come into a forum, like they have a landing page with rules. Like they have, I feel like a lot of those spaces kind of set up the structure of a lot of like Discords actually. Like they took a lot of those channels and just kind of transposed them onto Discord, which is really cool. So that was actually super helpful for making Uppercut server because it was just like, yeah, I'm familiar with how this works. I can like write a rules post. I can understand there are different places for different things. Like, okay, dope. But when it came to gaming, my first online community also like won't name names, but it was like a pretty big like video game influencer men group, and their Facebook group is disgusting and awful. And I've heard that it's maybe a little better now than it used to be, but I finally left because I was just tired of like, it was gross stuff about police brutality even before like everything really hit the fan this year. Because like I got into that community when I was probably like, it was like 2017-ish. So it was like awful stuff about that. It was horrible sexist stuff. It was like most of my friends who were women in that group who had gone to events had been like treated poorly or like assaulted. There was like all kinds of shit and nothing was ever done about it. And a lot of they had a ton of mods, but a lot of them just got kind of shouted down when they actually tried to do anything about it. So I was like, you know, this sucks. I don't want to be here anymore. So I left that. And it super informed, yeah, like how we run Uppercut, because a lot of my, all of us who are in Uppercut were in that Facebook group at one point or another. So we all saw what was going on, and all of us were super not about it. So going into Uppercut, we were like, no, we're going to be very hands-on. Like, we're not going to have community mods. We're the mods. Like, we will be hands-on until it's not viable for us to do so. And then if that we hit that point, like, we'll figure out a different plan, because, like, that's the thing, too, is if you get too big and you don't have a moderation plan, like, everything goes to hell so fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I know this is, like, we even saw it with Blazeball a little bit, right? Like, that's, like, the biggest thing of the summer, and they had the Discord server that went from being, like, everybody was like, this Discord server is too great, to now they have to have, like, multiple servers, because it's just too big to deal with everybody, and I think like the Blazeball commissioner had to put out a tweet being like, hey, like, you guys can like log off of Blazeball, like, you don't have to be like this intense, because like I know it's getting stressful. And it's like that's all part of it, is like managing, you know, the people in your community and their expectations and kind of what they're doing. Because like I feel like most communities don't have to be like, hey, you guys can chill, but like everybody should feel like they can do that, I feel like. So I guess that's like kind of transitioning. What do we feel is like a good community? Because for me, I feel like it's definitely like very direct, clear communication between like you and the people within your community about everything, but especially like boundaries and like self-care kind of stuff. But what do y'all kind of feel on that?
I agree with you. I think a lot of it is setting boundaries for your community. I think making sure that people understand what your community is, not just once they're in it, but when you're presenting yourself too. How do you market your community? How do you tell people about your community? That way it sets the expectation right from the jump. I think additionally, one of the things that is important for communities is understanding that you're gonna mess up every now and again, but actually doing something after you mess up. And we had to deal with that in a very big way, like really recently. And it was one of those where it was super easy just to be like, okay, what do we do now? And kind of like, well, I guess we can't do anything. But instead what we did was we actually reached out to pretty much everybody in within sections of our communities that have been affected by some stuff. And we're like, what do you want us to do? Like, what do you want us to do? What can we do to make sure that this can change? And then we worked together with all of so the way, essentially how our server works is my husband, who is the co-founder of But Why Tho, he runs all of the server for the most part. So he makes the channels, he mods all the time. And then you have me, and then a few you have our editors, and they also have mod powers to kind of like make sure that they're looking through everything, because our server has like our writing side and our site side, but it also has opened up to so much more, especially since we've been growing through COVID. And so we've had to really look at how we grow and how we establish the boundaries that we all know are important, because I think that's one of the things that a lot of people don't get right away, is that it is okay to tell somebody that they can't be in your space in a way that makes you uncomfortable. And I think that especially when you come from a community of color or you're a part of a marginalized group, you immediately feel like you can't set your boundaries with somebody else because of how they'll react to you. And I think that it's really important to understand that, no, it is your community. You can set those boundaries. And by setting those boundaries, you are probably going to be helping other people in your community. It's not just for your brand. It's not just for you. It's making sure that everybody has a safe experience and being really upfront with that. And I mean, learn from mistakes. So
yeah.
I think communication's a big one, because I know I've been part of toxic communities, and like, Kate was saying, like, sometimes you feel like you can't speak up because you are a marginalized person, and you feel like you're putting yourself at risk by voicing your concerns, and you think they won't be well received, or you won't be listened to, or whatever it may be. But I think, forming groups of people that you feel comfortable speaking with, and having having someone who does have more control over the community, having them be more understanding and more like listening to their community's members, like having all that stuff set up is so important, because then, I think not communicating is how communities get very toxic. That's how, bad people work their way in, they get some kind of foundation in your group, and then that's all of a sudden it's like nobody wants to address the issue because it's become so big. So yeah, just having people in places of power that are listening to the community and reaching out too. Like if you see that someone doesn't feel comfortable speaking up, go one-on-one with them and say, hey, how are you feeling? Like, is anything bothering you? Like, that's also important, because there are people out there who, even if the community's opening and welcoming, they're probably not going to they're not going to feel comfortable saying it in an open space,
Yeah.
Totally.
And oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, to piggyback off that, and obviously like our Discord server is still fairly small, so I have the ability to do this, but like if I notice that there's an exchange, not necessarily like hostile, but like I could tell that like both people got a little heated, I message them and I'm like, hey, how did you feel about this situation? Was it okay? Do I need, like, what can I do? And I understand that that's not scalable for when you're at a huge piece, but when I see people who are consistently active in our server and talking, and then I see them get into a situation where it may have just been an argument, I want to make sure that there wasn't stuff overstepping, because what is offensive to me may not be offensive to somebody else. But also what is offensive to somebody else, I may not be able to put that lens on to see it as that way. So you have to be super empathetic and open to like asking, like, hey, are you fine? I don't think this is bad. And you don't have to say this, but like, I may not think this is bad, but there is potential for that this may have been for that other person.
Yeah, totally. I think it really comes down to, I mean, to echo a lot of your sentiments, just having people that you can trust in place to help moderate is key. I know for me personally, a skill that I'm still developing, even at my age, is sort of understanding when I need help. Because when I first started it, and my community is still small enough that it's manageable, but at first I thought I could do, I'm going to do it all. I'm going to be, I'm also a little bit of a control freak in that way, but
big mood,
yeah. So, when you have the people that are most passionate speak up and are willing to, suggest things and give you feedback and great feedback, I think those are the folks you identify as like people you want to help build things together with, and folks who can establish those rules. So when people come into your room, they can see those rules and hopefully understand that, like, if you're developing a more accepting, welcoming community, that this is a place where we really go out of our way, even if it's just a little bit, to consider other people's feelings. And when a joke comes off that's a little off color, or someone even messages one of the our mods, or even me personally, and says, hey, someone said this in this channel and I don't know if I like that kind of language or whatever the case may be, and we'll go back and review it and check it out. I'll step up and I'll message people directly, and I think it's important to make like kind of I guess it depends on what the offense is here, but because I have no problem being like you're gone, like you're blocked. But if it was like an honest mistake, if it was a matter of someone maybe pushing the boundaries a little too much, because I think that's what folks tend to do just in general. They try to see, like, test what they can get away with or whatever. Some folks are just naturally like that. I'll DM them and I'll say, hey, I'm just like, look, I'm not here to be, I'm not here to arrest you or anything. I'm just here to be like, listen, I saw some things that I thought were a little troublesome, and I just want to talk about it. Like, as long as you approach it kind of very, what's the word? Just really like calmly, and you're not really wagging your finger at them. I think 9 times out of 10, at least in my experience, I find that folks are like, hey, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. I'll look out for that next time, and I'll be more conscious of that. And I think then it's a matter of talking to your mods again and saying, hey, maybe we should update the language in the rules or whatever the case may be, and our code of conduct or whatever. And just gently nudging folks to take another look at it if it's updated, or when folks just join, to make sure that they actually read it, so that you don't have the same mistakes hopefully happen again. But yeah, I think it's as long as you're making a place that everyone feels, like you said, comfortable to speak, especially even if it's like privately. Like I tell everybody in my community, like, feel free to hit me up, like DM me, like my DMs are open. We're still small enough that I can comfortably do that. But yeah, I think that's an important thing. Just make sure that everyone has a way to talk to you, even if it does kind of, it doesn't happen within the channel itself. It can just come to you privately.
Misty's
they agree.
She says, yeah, man, word. But I think something else that like all of this is kind of hit on is like, Misty, come on, dude. I think something that this kind of hits on is just the fact that like a lot of community management is staying engaged with your community, right? And like, because part of my bad experience was like the big group that I was in had mods, but the people from like the company were not really like interacting with them. They were kind of left to make their own decisions, and that got really overwhelming for those people, especially because like they weren't getting paid. They were just doing it in their free time because they cared about the community or whatever. And like you would have a mix of people who were like, some were really about getting rid of people as soon as they did something fucked up, and other people were like, no, chance after chance after chance. And like there was just no control there. And like I don't think there's anything wrong with having community mods who aren't you, but you have to stay engaged with them and be talking, because otherwise it's just like it gets out of control so fast.
I think that's the important part too, is like if you're not the one doing the modding, you need to make sure that the people you entrust to mod for you are upholding your values, understand what you want in your community, and and that you're constantly communicating with them. Like, because that's like, if you like, you're right, like if you miss that communication piece where you're actually talking and like, because I understand like larger servers, a lot of people can't do like the stuff that we've mentioned, but like they can just have like a mod meeting like once a month, or like that's all it can take is like, hey, let's because we have meetings in ours for like all the different levels of like of leadership with the at But Why Tho, like we check in once a month, not because we have to, and we may not always have something to talk about, but it's like, hey, how was this last month? Is we need to talk about? Is there any concerns you may have? Do you think we should do anything different? And that just regular check-ins. Like it's an easy thing. Add it on a calendar. Make it like 30 minutes to an hour. There you go.
Yeah. And just having like an appropriate number of mods handy, like, if you're anticipating a huge, like if you're doing like a huge stream and like there's going to be a lot of people watching it, like having all hands on deck for that stream and making sure like, okay, let's do a quick meeting before this happens. And like, this is what we're like, this is what we're going to time out people for. This is what we're going to ban people for. This is like making sure everyone's on the same page and everyone understands. So it's not like, when things are happening and things are like super crazy, it's not like you're having to address things that are happening that shouldn't be happening, like over moderation or under moderation. I think that's all super important.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing that helped me personally too, because this was all relatively new to me. I've never had a Discord, or I just started streaming very recently, so this is still relatively new to me. But one thing that really helped out was we had a mod. Shout out to Mo, mod in the Waypoint community Discords, who also stumbled upon our show and stuff, and has been super super helpful in guiding us and making sure that our language is the right way, and that we have channels for specific things. So I think like, I guess echoing another sentiment I had earlier, just knowing when to ask for help and trusting folks who have experience doing it, because like I'm also in the Waypoint community Discord, and I like the way that that's run, and it was a huge relief, and a huge weight off my shoulders to entrust somebody who, I'd known him for a while at that point. It wasn't just like I just met him and was like, yeah, come be a mod on my Discord. But he has been such a huge help, and I think that's part of it too. It's just knowing when you can identify that help, and be willing to trust somebody, because like, it's a team effort. Honestly, it's after a certain point you have to rely on folks, and I do think keeping that open channel of communication is key.
Yeah, and I think it's like part too of like knowing what you need for what, because like for Uppercut, right, like we don't have no one from the community as a mod in our Discord, but we do have community mods on our Twitch, just because like we need more help with our Twitch, just because like all of us aren't available all the time, but Discord's a lot easier because we're all just like on our phones all the time. And two, like honestly, like Andrew and I kind of are the more heavy Discord people anyway, so we kind of deal with more stuff. But with Twitch, it's any or all of us at any point, and if we're not in the chat, like we can't all always be in each other's streams all the time. So just like knowing, like Paul said, like when to reach out, and knowing when you need certain things, because it's not going to be a monolith in how you're managing your community.
Yeah.
But how do you all feel about like communities, like, because something that I've been running into more and more is like the notion that like no space is going to be right for everybody, and so like I've been kind of trying to deal with that by just like tailoring our space more to us and like our strengths and our audience, but I guess I'm kind of wondering like how you all have run up against it or dealt with it in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think because the truth is, like, a piece of media or a piece of content that you're producing isn't always going to hit with everybody. And sometimes when you focus so much on, like, well, we're going to do all the letters of the alphabet instead of X, Y, and Z that we're really strong in, and we'll cultivate our community, it sometimes gets hard to build that genuine connection across. So, like, we had way more channels in our server before. Like there was like a channel for everything, literally everything, but they were like dead channels and nobody was actually using them. Nobody was engaging with them. And so what we did, specifically what Matt did, he went through and he kind of like looked at who is using what channels could be condensed into smaller pieces, and tried to tailor the experience to the community that we had already built. And then now as we build stuff out, we're very much focusing on being an open space, and it's easier for us because we're general pop culture, like literally everything. So we have a much wider audience in that way, and so our community reflects that. But what we've been trying to do more so is making sure is as our community's interests do, kind of like wax and wane and stuff like that, we're adapting our tools to them. So we're adapting the channels that we have to them. When we see a need, we do it. Like we have a 2020 events channel in our Discord, which was a COVID channel, because a lot of people just needed a place to talk about the stuff that was happening to them. And we were doing it in general for a while, and we realized, well, actually this can be pretty triggering for people that just they don't want to see this all the time. So we made the COVID channel, and a lot of people got we just used it to share news, share updates, talk through stressful situations. And then as COVID became just one of the things happening in 2020, we then adapted it to just be a general current events channel where people could go in and discuss and have those conversations. I will say that we're fairly lucky in that we all kind of jive with the same core principles in our community. So that was a channel we were worried about. So we had heavy eyes on it to make sure it didn't, get into any bad territory, but it didn't. And a lot of that, I think, too, is how we handled it. So every time we add a channel, away a channel, or try to shift conversations to a specific one, we do a giant post that says, this is exactly why we want to move this to this channel. This is what it is allowed in this channel. If you're going to, especially for that channel, especially when the protests had just started happening and people were sharing videos, we're like, this channel is marked as not safe for the work. You will see this kind of stuff. But if you're going to post it, you do not just post that link. You post a description before, and you make sure that you're letting people know what is happening, and use spoiler tags if you can. And so a lot of that was making sure that if somebody walks into the channel, they're not going to be hit with something that is immediately triggering, or they just don't want to see. So our main goal has been outlining what you will find in every channel and keeping them to those things. That said, I mean, it's weird, right? Because I don't want to say oh, my community may not, because my community is for everyone, right? We want every type of person to come to us, but sometimes we just may not be on the same wavelength as other folks. So I've actually never really thought about seeing our I don't know, we just try to adapt to who comes, and as a group mostly marginalized folks from different backgrounds, our main thing is just making sure that it's not only diverse but that it's inclusive. That inclusivity piece is what people miss. And if you're doing the most to make sure that people feel appreciated in the space that they're coming to, if they leave your server because maybe they just didn't care about games anymore and they just wanted to go to a comic book server, that's a totally cool thing that can happen. Not every community will fit every interest. What you don't want is somebody leaving your server because they don't feel included in your general conversations or appreciated in your general conversations. I don't know if that answered the question, but that was a hella long answer, so I'm going to stop talking right now.
I think that was good. I think that was very thorough.
Yeah, I think part of just what I've seen across the board, because I have friends who are streamers and I've worked, for websites before. I think part of establishing your brand is figuring out who exactly you want your audience to be. I think people should feel okay with saying what, I want my audience to be welcoming and inclusive and very much tapped into being accepting of other types of people and experiences. I think there's a lot of brands out there that think being for everyone means that you have to tolerate toxic people. That's not necessarily true. I don't believe that at all. I think the best kind of community that is for everyone is one that's well moderated and one that is firm in its principles and knows what it is. If you're a website about gaming, cool. Just because currently gaming is a toxic place doesn't mean you have to allow toxic people to take over your comments and your chats. I think to have a really successful brand and be opening and welcoming to everyone, it's just about establishing what kind of audience you want beforehand. Yeah. Okay. I felt like I had more to say, but I'm nothing's coming out. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually. In the midst of all this, I honestly, you know what, you're right. So what's the question again?
Oh, I was just saying,
Sorry, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sorry. I was just saying, dealing with, kind of what Felicia was talking about of, my thought is, a lot of, bigger sites, I feel just kind of let people run wild because, gaming is for everybody, so people, and,
Right.
when it comes down to it, if you have a successful community, you're gonna cut people out just because they're not gonna vibe with your vibe or they're gonna be assholes or whatever. But so just how if you've had experiences with that or how you've dealt with it or how you feel you might, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. I think, like we said before, like just kind of laying out the boundaries and just making sure that folks do use the spoiler tags and content warnings are also super helpful. I also think, um, again, echoing sentiments, like the kind of energy you put out at the time, the Discord that I currently, I'm in charge of, I guess, used to be for our podcast, which we just recently ended very a couple weekends ago. And I think it's all about like the kind of energy you put out there. So if there are things that you're talking about, that if you're talking out against toxicity and you're talking about just being more empathetic and more caring and more inclusive, but also just understanding, I think that you're just naturally going to attract those same kinds of folks. And I think it's important to, like we said earlier, empower those folks to feel confident in speaking up when something kind of goes a little off the rails. Or so when that does happen, I mean, I think it really does feel like you're managing a team. It feels like you're managing. I went to film school, so I love sort of directing and telling folks like, oh, we need this here, we need that there, whatever. But in this case, it really is like that. It really is like you got to trust your mod to handle what he's handling. You got to trust your audience as well to speak up when something kind of feels off or whatever. And when it does, it requires a bunch of different approaches. But I think more than anything, I think you have to establish the trust first and foremost. And if that gets broken, if it's really egregious, like I said earlier, I'm totally fine with just kind of jettisoning you out into space and being like, bye, you're not welcome here anymore. Like you don't even deserve the opportunity for me to explain what went wrong. But sometimes, like I said, it's a matter of this server will fly in here and in our server, and it won't. It just like I refuse. And so yeah, I think kind of just telling your audience to feel like it's okay to contact a mod or contact me directly, or instead of just kind of engaging them and trying to resolve it there. I think there are times where that happens, and sometimes it sort of equalizes, and even then you kind of talk to the folks involved visually. As this happened, like let's talk about it real quick, because I'm just not gonna sweep it under the rug. But yeah, I think it's just like building that trust with your mods, sure, but also with your audience, because they know, honestly, they're the folks who are gonna alert you when something happens. So you have to empower them to feel like it's okay to speak up and let us know when that stuff happens.
Yeah,
I think.
Oh no, go Felicia. Go.
Well, okay, one last thing. There's like with websites, I know at IGN, when we touch on something that we know is probably gonna be like a shit show in the comments, we anticipate that. We are like, okay, this post is going up, it touches on topics that we know people are probably gonna just gonna say not some good things in those comments, and we have moderators for those articles, so that if they're in the comments saying some wild shit, it's like, all right, we're deleting that. Where we have like a system where we bump up the good comments, so it doesn't get overrun with crazy nasty things, so we try to like anticipate that stuff. And I think that's just another part of it. It's like if something is happening on a stream and you kind of know ahead of time, like, oh, well, if the wrong people get a hold of this, they're probably gonna just try to, bring it down or whatever it is, like just anticipating that beforehand and having like people ready to like mod the hell out of it.
I also feel like, not to be cynical, but you all have, like, not you all, but like if you're building a community, you have to think about the worst thing that can happen. Because it will probably happen. Like we have had people come in because we didn't know that Discord had a feature where you could type something in and it speaks out to everybody.
I also didn't know about that.
Don't turn that off.
That's haunted. That sounds haunted. That is cursed.
It's terrible, and it will go out to anybody who has Discord open in that channel. And Infinity War got spoiled for a whole bunch of people in our server.
Oh no.
Matt and I were doing a Marvel Ultimate Alliance stream, and we got a few trolls in there who were trying to spoil it for us. Good old Matt put on his mod hat and was like, Kate, keep playing. I'm just going to go through and start ban words. And we had our Discord link, and we didn't even think about Discord. We were super, super small at the time, like minuscule baby. We're not huge now, but we were definitely not even anything big then. And all of a sudden I hear coming from his room, the audio, he just slams the door real quick and like goes in and tries to get the person banned. And we didn't know that was a thing. Yeah. So I say that because know your tools.
Yeah.
And like, if you're going to be doing an event in your Discord, think about the worst thing that could happen and make sure that you have a contingency plan for it. It sucks to think that way, but all it takes is one bad person getting your link. Like, I think it was like the second community night we did, we had a few like people come in and troll and voice, and we were able to ban them right away because we already thought like this can happen. We haven't had it happen since, but like making sure you have contingency plans built out, and hopefully it never happens and you never have to deal with it. But if it does, you want to be prepared.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it sucks to get taken by surprise because like we definitely have a little bit recently because we have attracted some not great attention from a particular person currently, and a lot of their fans camp our site, and it's become a whole thing. So now we're gonna have to like retroactively like figure out like how we're going to deal with this and like make sure like that new people who come in are coming in good faith and all of that kind of stuff. Which like I wish we had thought of it sooner, but we didn't really think about it till it happened, and now it's like, oh shit, like I wish we had a little bit more of a plan. So yeah, 10 out of 10 would recommend that for sure.
Also understanding, this is more of just a tip, if you ban somebody from your server or you remove somebody from your community, make sure you have your mods kind of watching who comes into the server. You'll feel paranoid as all hell, because we did when we had to do that and let somebody go, but like it does not hurt. Don't feel like you're a bad person for like, who's this person? I've never seen them before, and it just happened after this thing. Let's see what they say for a little bit.
Yeah, and there are also really good tools that identify how long they've been online, how long that account's been around for. And so it's like you said, absolutely know your tools. And as this is sort of just kind of pie in the sky, like hopefully this works, but especially if it's a live context, I've had situations where while I was streaming, I was also kind of with the laptop on the side for when I was at Kotaku, and somebody would come into chat and just be toxic, and just kind of quietly ignoring them, and then like also banning them at the same time, and then like moving forward, trying not to like try your best to like not get flustered. I know that's a lot to ask sometimes, but it really does make a difference. It really does make a difference if you can, and if hopefully you have someone on hand, like you mentioned earlier, who can do that for you, so you're not down there in the weeds yourself.
I guess kind of branching off of that, is there stuff that we kind of hope like the community or like the industry can embrace more broadly, or like stuff that we'd want to see, or like I guess more like pie in the sky hopes for community management and like making the scene less awful?
We need more people from marginalized groups as community managers. That's it. And it's not to do. But the thing is, and one of the hardest things when you're modding something is you have to be able to put yourself in the position of somebody who is dealing with that issue, which means that if you are somebody who is not from a marginalized group, you may not understand why somebody saying, oh, you speak well, can be taken bad. You just may not know that a microaggression exists because you've never had to be put into that situation. And especially when you look at like streaming, in which they're not going to say a traditionally racist thing, but they will say the gamer equivalent of that. And you have to learn those things. You have to learn what is happening. And it's not to say to put the burden on folks to do it themselves. But when we're in positions, we can then change community management spaces. Like, I have talked to a couple community managers who didn't, like, I had made the comment that I had stopped streaming because I had gotten some Latinx racial slurs towards me. And it got to the point where I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore. Mm-hmm. And I wrote it out and I told them, like, wait, what's that? And I was like, what? They were like, yeah, I've never heard that word before. And I was like, okay, happy for you, bud. But also, you're a community manager, so you should understand. Sent them, it's like, these are all the words you need to ban from all your chats. This is what you need to look for, what is happening. And as I've kind of talked with more community manager friends on different levels of games, it is just a lack of understanding of what needs to be done. And if you diversify the people doing the work and building out the programming, because like in my real life, my site, also my real life, but like the thing that pays me is I do diversity and inclusivity training, and I teach people how to use tools from that perspective. I build out strategies to help teams realize their blind spots and how to make it better. And hiring is one of them. And if you have one person on your team who understands how things work in that way, you can then affect strategy across all community management at a site, at a game, it's all it takes. Building out a strategy that is inclusive, comprehensive, and empathetic.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think emphasizing, like, putting people of color in positions of power is super important, because what I've seen and what I've experienced personally is, we have these sites and like all the execs are white, all of the senior management is white. And then, at the bottom, of course, are like, they hire people of color. And having people of color, in places where they can't really effectively make change doesn't really change anything. They can voice their concerns, but if the people at the top don't understand those concerns and they dismiss them, then you're gonna just keep having the same problem. So making sure that, like, make sure your management and your executives are diverse, and that way when these problems come up, you have people who are equipped to be like, you know what, they're right, like, we should be doing that, and why aren't we doing that, rather than, I don't think that's a problem, let's whatever, like.
Yeah, I mean, not much to add here besides yes, amen. More people of color, more folks from all different walks of life in positions where they can actually affect real change, for sure. Yes, I'll here for that. I think also, speaking from personal experience too, like acknowledging when there is an area that you don't know a lot about, and knowing when maybe you've made a mistake, maybe you've overlooked something, and just being like willing to hear that from even your own audience, I think is huge. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm here for it, all of it, love it.
Yeah, also hire diversity inclusion experts, because it's also important to understand that the onus shouldn't be on the people of color or the marginalized people within your communities to always raise the concerns, because that's exhausting for them, and that's emotional and like laborious for them. So yeah, that's what those people are there for. Hire them, pay them.
And I do want to also add one thing as a pie in the sky. The pie in the sky here, because the community management stuff or whatever, that you can do that, they can do that, but the pie in the sky is, I would very much like companies, esports teams, anything that has a live stream, to value the safety and comfort of its viewers over the clicks that they generate from having hateful things. Because I have known a couple of friends who are one specifically, he was a prominent Black esports pro, and his stream, people would ban him, and then another mod would take them out of ban or out of timeout because it was driving more viewership. And that was something, and this was a while ago, I think it was like 2014, 2015, but like that stuff happened. And that happens because companies value people coming here for hate clicks to watch it, or people coming here to come generate more chat because they're fighting it, and all of that, when all it takes is just eliminating it. All it takes is just banning people. And the thing is you have to value the safety and comfort of your community if you actually want it to be genuine, if you want people to be there for it. And I know that like companies don't care about that because they just want, you know, views and clicks, engagement. But that's not the be all and all. So my pie in the sky is for them to stop looking at that and start thinking about the people on the other end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think to have a community that's going to be loyal and that's going to last, you have to prioritize, you know, not allowing that kind of stuff to overcome and to be a priority, because eventually people are going to get tired of it and they're going to stop coming back to you, and all that stuff you allowed to take over is going to eventually be the end of you. You know, people are going to start noticing, they're going to start calling you out on it, like, oh, they always let this stuff happen, and it's because they know it's for the clicks, and it's just not good long-term strategy, so don't do it.
Yeah, I don't, you know, I mostly am just thinking about the fact that people don't understand how like SEO and like clicks work, because like if you continue to click on a thing, it will keep showing up. That's how it works. A lot of people don't get that, which is strange, but you know. But yeah, is there anything else that y'all wanted to do before we wrap up? We're just about at 50 minutes, so we're actually killing it pretty hard right now.
I think maybe focusing on like maybe like a key thing that each of us has done or seen done in a community that we think has like helped build it in like a positive way might be good.
Yeah, I think that's a good one for sure.
I can start. So us specifically was, and again, we did this because we were small, but we noticed a lot of the people who interact with our Twitter, our site Twitter, and then some people who are active in our Discord, that they were just not handling COVID well, because nobody is. I mean, it's okay. Like it's a mess. But it was one of those where we realized that there were people who have been disconnected from literally all of their support systems, and they had never been in online only things. And so what we did was we essentially listened to them without even directly like asking them. We just watched how they were behaving and the types of stuff they were posting, and then we realized like we should start doing community nights where we just get together and watch movies. And it is minuscule, I get it, but it's like 2 hours on Sundays. We watch a full season of anime, so that's like 5-6 hours of just being with other. All right, this thing has actually really helped me during this, because I had no other interaction with people, and this is what I needed to stay connected. And so like I think one of the best things you can do as you're building your community, and when you're able to, is sometimes just look at how people are acting and what they're talking about and what they're doing, and let that drive what you do next in your community building effort.
Yeah, going off that, similar. I think Kate, you and I actually have talked about this before, but during about the same time, a lot of Uppercut people were just like having a real bad time. So we started streaming every day we did it for like 2 months, I think, and then we stopped because we were tired, because it's a lot of streaming. But like I think it helped a lot of people just like kind of get through that rough patch, because a lot of folks in our community were just having a really hard time and like didn't have much to engage with, but that was just, you know, us being goofy for an hour in a night or whatever was like enough. And I think like this probably, I don't know, it maybe sounds cynical to a degree too, but like if you invest in your community, they're gonna invest back in you, you know, like if you show them that you care about them and like that you want to do stuff with them and that you want to be engaged with them, like they're gonna bring that energy back to you.
Yep.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've done similar things where, I mean, our community has come to us with ideas of like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Let's definitely do something like that. Where, you know, some folks, especially in the daytime, as a result of COVID, a lot of folks are working from home, or they just have way more time at home. So we just have a channel where folks just are present with each other, so like just on an audio call. And if something comes up they want to talk about, they can talk about it. If not, they just kind of are just present with each other in the moment, which I think is really cool. But I think understanding when there are needs or really good opportunities to give those little areas to release a little bit of pressure. So we have a channel that's just called Real Life Shit, where we just talk about stuff that happens in our life that's real, and damn, this just happened to me, I just got laid off, or whatever the case may be. And also counterbalancing that with channels that are just like good vibe. We have one called Good Vibes, where we just share good news, and we kind of just cheer each other on before a big interview or whatever. I think it's just like also understanding that our podcast tried to communicate to our listeners, hopefully successfully, that it's not just about games. It's games are great. That's why we're here. That's why we all are kind of sharing this space together. But everything is connected, not just in terms of other mediums, but life. Like, it's hard to separate that from our hobby a lot of times, because especially nowadays, it's like every day feels like another huge challenge to get through, and giving folks just that support, like you said, like for a lot of folks, this is their only means or only way to have a sense of community and belonging and purpose a lot of times. So you have to really nurture that. And I think just doing it with care and listening, actually listening, makes a huge difference, because then they come back and they kind of also water that same need and want a lot of times. So yeah, it's just like it's just look after them, they look after you. It's that simple.
Yeah, I agree with all of it. I don't really have much to add.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think we done did a panel, y'all. Kate,
Yes.
Kate, where can people find you if they're so inclined?
So you can find me at Oh My Myth Randier on Twitter, and you can find my site at But Why Tho PC on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, literally everything. Also, because this is in October, when this panel is happening.
Time is fake.
We are currently raising money for St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. We're doing it in partnership with them, and we are trying to get close to our goal and just help a lot of people with the platform that we've built. So if you head on over to But Why Tho PC on Twitter, you can get all the information on how you can help donate. But also, if we hit $5,000, I will be dyeing my hair at home, and you will choose the color.
Oh,
there's
wow.
a lot of hair.
Wow.
So we're gonna do it. So yeah, that's me.
Nice. Felicia, where can they find you?
I'm at Felicia Vagabond on literally everything. So I've picked up streaming once in a while. If you want to hang out with me, I usually do it on the weekends, and I play a lot of indie stuff. So at Felicia Vagabond.
Sweet. And Paul?
I'm at Tamayo on everything. So POLIM as in Mario, AYO. I'm on Twitter, Instagram. I also started streaming recently. I do it 4 times a week. So twitch.tv/Tamayo. Come through, hang out. We'll have a good time.
Hell yeah. And you can find me, the person, on Twitter at TY_G8Rs. And you can find Uppercut mostly on everything at Uppercut Crit. I kind of fucked up the Instagram, but it's fine. And yeah, that's gonna do it for us, I think. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Yay!
Thank you.